All right, Matthew, it's time. We're talking Chernobyl. This is something we've wanted to do for a while. We have taken a Battlestar Galactica hiatus in a decision to pursue something that is very interesting, very hot, and very different for us. There's a lot of advantages to it. The cynic will say, you guys are just trying to capture whatever, and that's not wrong. But it also has to be interesting. There's plenty of new shit we do not discuss.
That's true.
And
can't hop on every hype train.
I mean, if that was the case, we would just do an MCU podcast, right? Then we'd be on the top of the world. But no, in all seriousness, this is going to be an interesting little side experiment for us that I'm looking forward to, and that is discussing the HBO series Chernobyl, miniseries to be specific. I think it's only 5 episodes, which suits us just fine. And we are going to be, if you're listening on YouTube live, we're going to be releasing these on the Science Fiction Film Podcast feed. So that's the move. That's what we plan to do. They're not. We toyed with making a couple available and putting the rest behind our paywall and bonus. We had a lot of different things we discussed, and we ended up landing on let us just put it on the Science Fiction Film Podcast. We'll put it out there, and most people who are searching for podcasts will just search for titles and will pop up, and then all of our current listeners don't have to worry about finding a new feed. And those of the people that listen to our podcast will not have to pay to listen to this. So that was the decision, and that's how we landed on this whole thing. And it was a subject that was of great interest to me. And having lived during this disaster and not knowing anything about it when I was a kid, truth be told, nobody did, obviously. That was sort of the way the Soviets kind of ran shop. But there was a lot of shit going on in 86, man. There was, Bill Buckner, who just died, crazy, blowing that play at first place. There was the Challenger. There was fucking Patriots got smashed in a Super Bowl. There was, I remember many, many things being 10 years old, and Chernobyl was one of them. And strangely enough, I don't remember anything about it at all, other than I knew it was a thing and it was something crazy that happened.
What was the news coverage of it like in America? I mean, was it a big major thing?
I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm a Chernobyl expert because I was alive, like those assholes. That's not me. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Didn't watch the news. So I don't really remember. I distinctly remember Challenger because I was in the cafeteria and I was like, why are all the adults crying?
Yeah,
because we actually watched it. They had those TV carts. They wheeled them into the cafeteria to watch the explosion. And when it blew up, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of a weird separation." Like my mind my mind was in denial. We're going to talk a lot about that. I was like, "Oh, weird." Yeah. Like the way it split apart. Is that part of Now I'm using language I didn't use when I was 10, but I'm going to use adult language now, which was, "Oh, that's weird." Like, is that part of the separation process? I didn't say that, but I thought, oh, is this part of the way it works? Probably when I was 10.
Right.
And then teachers started bawling, and I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm going to eat my brownie. That was 50 cents.
It's weird. I have an extremely similar memory with 9/11 because we watched that live. That was my
Me too.
childhood event of adults crying at school. I remember watching the second plane hit live, and I'll never forget the second plane hitting live and hearing a kid go, whoa, that was cool looking.
Right. That's wild,
just like that disconnect from reality. Like they're just not fully soaked in yet.
Yeah, it's nuts. And it's funny when you think of these disasters, you start with Chernobyl, perhaps the Challenger, perhaps pick a disaster, 9/11. I mean, Jesus, as far as America goes, the United States, it's pretty significant. And now with the information age, you're pretty cognizant of all disasters at all times. It's if something crazy happens in Sri Lanka, minute by minute, play by play. And that's, there's a lot of that. And it's funny, I attribute a lot of depression and anxiety to this very fact, which is that we're incapable. I don't think we've evolved as fast as the technology has to get bombarded with all the information we have. So there is something to be said to be ignorance is bliss, and I think if there was a Chernobyl today, we would be like, oh, we know every fucking thing. Like Fukushima, we kind of knew a lot about, right? But it's an interesting, outside of it being in a country that's sort of off limits or has their own sort of their own, like if it happened in the middle of North Korea, we probably get very little information about it today. So yeah, it's tough to say, but it is a weird thing, you know, the idea of information and starting to show off on this theme of sort of denial. That's something that's interesting to discuss, and in the root
that's a major part of this. Yeah.
Yeah, the root of denial. There's a lot of different themes to explore and talk about here. And this will be different for us because we're not talking about story structure. We're not talking about screenplay. Yes, we are in a sense, but we're also talking about it from what I believe is Craig Mazin. Is that the man?
Indeed, creator.
Craig Mazin's idea of what happened based on his own research. Now, I did something I don't normally do, Matthew. I actually listened to that podcast, just the first episode.
Oh.
The reason I did that was because I wanted to understand some of the thought process behind what happened, because it's not every day that you have this opportunity. And because we're not dealing with our opinions of story structure, I thought it was good to have some of the facts as far as Craig was concerned. That podcast was, you know, well produced, as you'd imagine. Former NPR host, I forget his name. It's going to be what it's going. All those shows are going to be highly produced. And now, what you won't get on the HBO podcast, what you may get here, and I'm not saying we're better, but you're going to get probably times where I disagree, maybe, or I want to drill down on Craig's interpretations that he was offering on that show, where the host is not going to do that. Do you see what I mean? Craig Mazin, he's a big fucking shot. You're sitting across from him, you might get cold feet about challenging him on stuff. Fortunately, I don't have that restriction on me. I don't have ad revenue I need to worry about. So I have some thoughts and shit about some of the things we saw, and I'm really looking forward to talking about. Not to mention, we get to do this from a much different perspective. If you want to know Craig's thought processes and what he was thinking and the reason this story exists and why and what it was like, the scout locations and what was some of the things not included, definitely listen to that podcast. I highly recommend it. Check it out. They don't need me pimping it, but I'm being honest, it was informative and I liked it. And there was interesting moments where I was like, interesting take on that you think this about that culture and you think this culture would handle it differently. I don't agree with you. And that's okay. So there's a lot of stuff like that I'm definitely looking forward to talking about, and some interpretations of this. And, you know, the relationship between the Soviet Union and the United States was not good at the time. And I mean, they were a constant bad guy in entertainment. And, yeah, man, there's a lot of meat on the bone here with Chernobyl, and I can't wait to fucking dive into it. So I'm sort of setting the table. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to step away from it a little. I want to know about some of your impressions, sort of just high-level impressions of this. And then we'll kind of do what we always do, and we'll move scene by scene as Craig Mazin intended us to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now, shit, you got me wishing I listened to that podcast. You might need to check it out. I did do some research and some reading, because even going into this, I was very aware of, like, I know what Chernobyl is, the disaster, the accident. I didn't really know that much about it. I knew it was a late 80s nuclear disaster that was technically the worst nuclear disaster we've seen, even compared to Fukushima.
Did you know that it was in England, though?
Wow, no, that's actually a complete shocker. I had no idea. I mean, the accents on this show should have given it away.
Apparently, Chernobyl happened in England. Fucking hell, mate, it's gone nuclear. Fucking hell.
Catch the ass on your tongue. Ow, it burns.
Oh, it tastes like fucking metal out here.
Boy, I just love imagining a first listener who Googled Chernobyl, got to this episode, and like, wow, they seem like they're taking it very seriously. Oh, whoops. No, we are, though. We are. We're just going to be idiots. Wow, we do take it seriously. But no, diving into some of that history and just into the show itself, I actually really like the show's very tight focus on the present of that event, the immediate kickoff of it, and then we've only watched episode 1, but it seems like it's going to have a pretty narrow focus on the events there in Russia and the months around it, and not too much outside of that. And
sure,
I like that. To be honest, it got me curious about, what was America's perspective on this event? How much did we even know? Like, how much accurate information were we getting? That's another interesting bit of history that I'd like to learn about and would do a little more research on. But I'm glad the show's not going to try and tackle all of that. I'm like, pick your characters, pick your important players that were directly there, and let's just dive into that, because the history of this has been very, very muddled. It's taken a long time for really good, solid reporting and accounts to get out about all of this information. Like there's been some books in the past, I know 3-4 years that have finally come out that have a lot more information we've ever had.
Yeah, awesome.
But also, dude, everybody talking about this show as a horror show, I can't wait to talk about the tone.
Sure.
I think they're pretty dead on with that. And I think it was an interesting and good choice to essentially approach it in the way of a creeping, fucking, like, almost ancient horror kind of feel to it. This a feeling of dread.
There's a quote that I'm often reminded of that I don't really know who said it. Maybe you know. But it's the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, right?
Right.
I don't know. That's not exactly the quote, but you know what I'm saying. That sort of sentiment, and it's funny, man. You think about that here, and you're like, yes, this is unreal. It's really, it is terrifying. It does have a horror feel to it. Jason Tick in the chat actually said, I don't want to get too ahead in the episodes, but the show reminds me a lot of Dunkirk. I'm really glad that he brought that up. And if you're curious, we do record all of these shows live. If you're just finding us for the first time, we record these live on YouTube. So check out our schedule on the website. And that's this. In Dunkirk, you never really saw a German face.
Right.
It was very much this force, as it were, that was unstoppable. This juggernaut, this relentless force, and in Dunkirk, they are attacked with such relentlessness that it has a mechanical quality to it. Right. Which has a German quality to it, so to speak. And what's interesting about that is this is like Jason's sort of saying there, and obviously he's seen more of it than I have. And that we should make clear. We are not going to be spoiling episodes ahead, just the episode we're discussing, because we haven't seen ahead. But this idea of this force of nature being represented in a horrific way. It's a horrible thing to imagine Chernobyl, and then to almost structure it with a horror type of screenplay is interesting, right? Which is, it happens. And then it's the reaction and the response to it, like you said. So I'm really looking forward to that structure. What are some of your insights there?
Well, I mean, kind of like just to keep going on what you're saying, I like that. I mean, essentially, Chernobyl was the first, in a lot of ways, the first real nuclear disaster at all. And we were still not even totally sure of what the effects of radiation, massive radiation, would be on people.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the scary undertone that the show smartly kind of taps into, of this creeping unknown. It's not just that, oh, it's scary. There's not like creepy violin music. It's just an ominous, pulsating, you don't even know what this is going to do to you, but you know it's bad. We don't know how to even react to it yet. We can't anticipate it and get prepared for it. There's that great small scene in the hospital where I think that one doctor is looking out the window and like, do we have iodine tablets? And the other doctor's like, why do we even need that? But she's already starting to just think of possibilities. But like, that's it. That's all people have, is just kind of grasping for straws. I mean, cleaning up and repairing the damage and helping the injured for a nuclear disaster was an unknown. There was I actually watched a good interview with Jared Harris, who plays the guy who at the very beginning and at the very end, who I guess is going to go on to be the main character in the next episodes. But he was even talking about there was no blueprint for how to react to this. I mean, it's kind of insane that they even just sent in firefighters. Like they probably shouldn't have done that.
Right.
But what else do you do? There's a fire.
Right.
Just react how they know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. This is one of the interesting things about it. But before you move past the music point, I want to hang on that for just a second, because the composer and I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce the last name correctly. It's Hildur, I think, Gudnadottir. I can't do it, but
Guðnadóttir.
I don't know.
Icelandic. That's why it's so difficult.
It's a really cool name, but I believe it's a she. Boy, I'm an idiot if I got that wrong.
Yes, it's a she.
I believe she did Sicario Day of the Soldado, which is interesting because the sound, it's a soundscape, right?
Right.
You would say it's not. It lacks melody, and I think that's important because there's a quality to mechanical sounding music, and I really like that. And it's similar to Johan Johansson. He did the original Sicario score.
Right.
Which has the same quality in Arrival. And they brought this person in to do Sicario 2, which was a good choice because the music was very similar tonally. And I think I like the choice to make the music the way it is done, because without a melody, when it's sort of atonal and it's a lot of soundscape kind of stuff, and it has an electronic feel to it, it doesn't humanize sort of the fear. Like the Joker has a theme, Leatherface has a theme, Darth Vader has a theme. It personifies something. This doesn't personify anything. And I think that works really well for it. It's just a sense of impending doom. And I like that.
I mean, what is a melody except for a pattern that we recognize? And as you listen to it, you start to know what comes next. Like you're able to anticipate the notes. And without a melody, it's just this ominous fucking tone where like, I don't know what this could do or how it could change. And that's the fear of the whole thing, man. Like that's, and I think the way you said it too, of like not humanizing radiation, because it's not something evil. Like this is not an enemy.
Correct.
It's just a natural substance doing what it does if it's caught in the open air. Like it's just something beyond us.
Right. And it is like you said, you said this a few minutes ago, and they're kind of having a side chat in the live chat right now. This idea of not really understanding radiation and its effects on people. That's a reality, that, and I think that's why there was a lot of mishandling of this, and plus there's the denial piece of it, and it's crazy, it's the firefighter teams that were rushing towards the collapsing towers, getting just pummeled with asbestos in 9/11. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, I mean, this is just what we don't really know that this is futile. We're just going to react and respond the way we're supposed to react and respond.
Yeah,
we're going to go in there and try to extinguish the fire, try to see if there's people we can save. And that's the thing, firefighters going in there, a lot of it isn't just, we want to contain the thing. It's like, we want to get fucking people out of there. Like our training is to rescue people. That's what it is to do. And that's one of the things I struggled with when and it's just sort of two talking guys. But one of the things Craig Mazin said when he's talking about this, and he was talking about, how the Soviet Union handled it and how he theorized America would have handled it. I was like, yeah, maybe, but it's really tough to say, isn't it? Because regardless of whatever flag you salute in the morning or don't salute in the morning, one thing is common. Human beings are known to sacrifice themselves to save other human beings, and some human beings don't, and that's just the way it is. And I think it's important to always remember that, because there are tales from every culture all over the world where where noble sacrifice becomes a thing, and it's the truth. And I know there's an AfterBuzz HBO. There's an AfterBuzz podcast, Chernobyl, that got some bad feedback because their interpretation was that the guy at the end was going to look in the reactor because of fear of being shot, and people were very critical of that idea. They're like, it's American propaganda, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that because I don't know what he was thinking. And that's just the reality. I don't know. I have some theories that we can talk about when we get to that scene, but there is that part of it because I think he said something like, here's a direct quote from the HBO podcast from Craig Mazin. He said, heartbreaking social circumstance. You are there to support your fellow man and fellow woman. The people often did believe it and feel it. You can see this in all of history of the 20th century in Russia. Some of this was a sense of Soviet civic duty. It is noble, admirable, and beautiful, and profoundly sad underneath it. Okay, that's fine. And then he says, if this had happened in the United States, I think that would happen is that we would have evacuated there quickly and they just put a rope around it and said, you can't go there anymore because people will die. I mean, they kind of do that in Chernobyl anyway, don't they? Isn't that
right?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the end result is you can't go there anymore. But to
I know
say
they
people
wouldn't
evacuate it, I guess the implication. And listen, I'm interpreting what he said because I didn't have a conversation with him, and that's where I'm saying I kind of disagree because the interpretation of that is that the way he's positioned the two statements is, they are doing it out of a sense of civic duty. Well, American people and English people and African people and Japanese people and Chinese people and Korean people sacrifice themselves for their fellow man all the time. And I was like, I don't love this interpretation. Like, and it's a theory. He knows way more about Chernobyl than I do. I just want to make that clear. But he's theorizing that America would have handled it different. And I challenged that a little bit. And that was one of the things as we're talking about this, you know, this idea of sacrifice and charging in there. Like, dude, what are you talking about? People do that all the time.
I think on the human side of things, I think just about any country would handle it.
100%.
The human beings involved would handle it pretty much the same. I think there is probably something to be said about the government hierarchies and the culture of the governments that, you know, changes things. And, you know, we would approach some of this differently as far as who to call and how much information is being honestly spread. Because, you know, this fear of reprisal and fear of, you know, I think especially in this episode, the main chief engineer, Dyatlov, I think he knows from jump. I think he is so deep in denial because he knows it'll be his head on the chopping block if this really does get out as a, you know, unmitigated fucking disaster and somebody's to blame.
Sure.
He's like, it'll probably be me. I think that's definitely in the back of his mind, which is part of why he's probably just so like, no, it can't be that. That's not possible.
One thing I like to do too, and I think you know me pretty clearly, and people who are finding this for the first time because of Chernobyl, well, they're getting both barrels. I think you know me enough to know that when you know, certain people criticize certain governments, like one of my pet peeves is when people in other countries criticize other countries' governments, and I'm like, it's all of them. It's all of them. It's all of them. Like it is. I don't want to descend myself, and you know, I've had many intimate conversations about this, into like this collectivist ideology, like America would have been more transparent, we would have been cooler, we would have been awesome. No, I'm not saying there's more nobility in the government. Like governments the world over, as far as I'm concerned, meh. And in the same token, I think people are meh and awesome all over. And that's just the way it is. Like, I think too often we get embroiled in like these nationalistic ideologies, which is like, oh, they're monsters and we're not. We're noble. Nah, you're a monster and you're noble, and they're a monster and they're noble. Like, that's why I want to make sure, as we're talking about Chernobyl here, that I'm cutting through the bullshit here, because I'm assuming, as we've already got hinted at in this very first episode, we're going to see some sort of, and pardon the lack of terms, we're going to see some pretty villainous behavior from some of these Russian people and some pretty heroic behavior from some of these Russian people. And that is people everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think only when the rest of it starts to come into play, as far as like, let's have a judgment about how this was handled, or was it handled poorly? Was it handled well? I think once it gets into the aftermath of how much information is going to be released by the agencies involved and who's going to start being blamed, that's when I feel like is the only time you can start making judgments about, well, this government would handle, this is how they handle these kinds of things. This is the kind of punishments they dole out. And this is how, you know, these authorities are used there. And that might be different from here and there, but especially like boots on the ground trying to put out a fire. I think human beings are human beings, and you know, we try to help one another. You know, and that's another thing I think is a nice kind of divide in the show that you can already see forming, even in the first episode, is between the people on the ground, like the firefighters who are right there picking up pieces of fucking graphite on the ground, to the guys in the suits back behind, you know, closed doors going, okay, well, how do we handle this in the sense of a PR, in the sense of damage control, and thinking about it in a more abstract way, versus I think anybody who is feeling the heat of the fire on your face and you see your friends hurting, you're just going to help. You're just going to dive in and help.
Sure. And now that's not to say, and I want to make it very clear, that's not to say different types of governments in place, in my opinion, are more ideologically sound compared to others. That's my opinion. Yeah. Right. You know me, I am very pro-liberty. I think the more freedom people have, generally speaking, the better results you're going to get, the better country you're going to get, the more flourishing you're going to get, versus the more, I think the closer you get to totalitarianism, the worse it is, and the more you get towards liberty, the better it is. I will always think that as far as the spectrum goes, and that's just the way I think. So I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying the United States government and the Soviet government in 1986 was the same. Clearly it wasn't. It's not. I'm just saying that there are good and bad people the world over, and that's something that's important to remember when we're doing this. Yes, you know, because we've talked about, and a lot of times it's in jest. We're talking about something fictional. We've talked about the samurai, the honor. They're going to do this crazy thing. They're going to sacrifice. They're going to do this thing for the and it's a lot of times we attribute nobility to the romanticizing of the Bushido way, which, as we've learned in our research, maybe wasn't what we exactly all think it is, right? And at the same time, but at the same time, that's not to say, a Russian guy can't do it, a guy from Zimbabwe can't do it, a guy from Egypt can't do it, a guy from Afghanistan can't be that way, a guy from, I don't like when we forget that at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that there's some sort of, there's some inherent stuff in there that I think is pretty universal, regardless of whatever government that's either closer to totalitarianism or closer to liberty that is fucking putting its booty on all its citizens' neck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just, in other words, what am I trying to say? What's the word? I'm optimistic about people and I'm pessimistic about governments. That's probably the best way to summarize me.
Right.
There you go.
I can see that.
So, awesome primer. I'm pumped. Are you pumped?
I'm pumped.
I mean, I'm pumped, but it's brutal, but I'm pumped.
It's a fucking bummer.
I can't wait to talk about ionized air, and nuclear fallout falling on children's faces. It's a lot of fun.
Laugh riot, as they say.
A laugh riot. All right, so why don't we dive? Do you have any other opening impressions, or are you good? You primed?
I'm primed. I'm ready to dive in. I'm ready to definitely. I wrote down a good opening chunk of Jared Harris's dialogue.
I wrote the whole thing down if you need it.
Yeah. Oh, baby.
I got a couple of spots. I can assure you that little ridiculous prostate bullshit that guy was spilling at the end, I wrote that thing down too.
Oh, I knew that. Watching that scene, I was like, oh, Dean's going to scarf that up. Yummy, yummy, yummy.
I started tying a bandana around my face. I'm like, where is he?
Wolverine.
Oh, shit, man. I was about to tar and feather that bitch and throw him in the harbor.
That doddering old man.
I was going to tar and feather that old bastard and throw him in the harbor.
Kicking his sun-spotted head for freedom.
into the Boston Harbor. No more tea taxes. So we open Chernobyl, 12345, name of the episode. As we're going to learn, also known as the Vladimir I. Lenin Nuclear Power Station. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about the open, Matthew. Why don't you kick this off, get this dialogue going?
Absolutely. We have our boy, Jared Harris, who I'm a fan of for his portrayal of Lane on Mad Men. He's fucking excellent in that show. Really good character. And he played, I think he actually was Ulysses Grant in Lincoln, which was a nice little pop-up cameo in that movie. But he's excellent, and he plays Valery Legasov, the deputy director of the Kurchatov Institute, brought in to aid the cleanup efforts. But this is in the future. We are past the Chernobyl disaster, and we see him sitting alone in his apartment, speaking into a tape recorder. He's actually playing it back right here. And I'm just going to read this whole first paragraph because I think this is this is especially the meat of it. It opens with, "What is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we no longer recognize the truth at all. What can we do then? What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories? In these stories, it doesn't matter who the heroes are. All we want to know is who is to blame." Dude, that is, for one, it's a very meta comment.
Say it again. Say that again. Read that again. That's
the last sentence? Yeah. What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories? In these stories, it doesn't matter who the heroes are. All we want to know is who is to blame. And what are we left with talking about Chernobyl? A story made by HBO. That's a story.
The meta irony is not lost on me.
Absolutely. And I mean, here we are. I mean, and that's a good way of framing it, that at the end of the day, that's what history is thoroughly researched stories that we tell ourselves to explain what happened. I mean, that's all that history is. I mean, even the most definitive, thoroughly researched account is still, at the end of the day, a story supported by dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and thousands of people's different stories to cross-check evidence and make a definitive guideline of this is what happened. And I think the real point of this entire show, what it sounds like, if it's laid out its thesis, I think it is, what is the cost of lies? That's the opening line of this series, and I imagine that's going to be at the heart of it.
Yeah, and the haunting part is that we no longer recognize the truth at all, right?
Right. Oh, that's the scariest shit, man.
Yep. We also get the second paragraph, which we don't need to read the entire thing verbatim because it's not as important as the first half in terms of tone, as far as I'm concerned, and I think that's a good choice by you. Is how do you say it? Dyatlov, Anatoly, yeah. Dyatlov. So the man doesn't deserve prison; he deserves death, right?
Damn.
I believe that's how he ends that last paragraph.
Right.
But instead, he gets 10 years for criminal mismanagement. What does that mean? No one knows. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that to them, justice has been done. Because you see, to them, a just world is a sane world. He then says there was nothing sane about Chernobyl. What happened there, what happened after, even the good we did, all of it madness. While I've given you everything I know, they'll deny it, of course. They always do. I know you'll try your best. And essentially, we see him stash the tapes, feed his cat, and then kill himself. One thing I learned from the podcast, which again I think is good, by Craig Mazin, the HBO official one, is that they discuss Legasov having a family, and he was like, I kind of left him out because it didn't really serve the story for what he was going for, which made sense. I'm kind of butchering his exact reason, but he left the family out and he has a good reason for it.
Right.
So yeah, the guy hangs himself, and then bang, the title card comes up, and we go to Pripyat, Ukrainian SSR, 2 years and 1 minute earlier.
I gotta say, it's a small thing, and maybe he didn't even mean it this way, but I interpreted it this way, how he feeds his cat, and his cat, the sound of him kicking the stool and dropping down and dying, hanging himself, is we hear it while we watch the cat. Yeah, while we watch the cat just sit there and eat its food, oblivious to what's happening around it. I'm like, that's what a microcosm of this whole thing. That, I'm just eating food. I don't know. What's happening?
Look at you, 2 points. That's a good connection.
Swish!
Yeah, the cat's like, what's that noise in the other room? I don't know. I'm hungry.
Anyways, fucking frisky treats.
One of the things I learned from that podcast was the people, he asked a lot of locals. They're like, oh, we didn't have cat food. Well, that didn't exist. Oof. We just fed the cat. It's like our food.
I'm just going to chop up my fish a little smaller. Here you go.
There's no like actual brands of cat food. But, so we go to Pripyat, Ukrainian SSR, 2 years and 1 minute earlier.
Damn.
Socialist Soviet Republic, by the way, if you don't know what SSR means.
Indeed. And this, dude, I love this point of view of seeing the actual explosion from very far away. It's something that happens and everybody hears it, but it's just far away enough to be like, oh, well, it's not a mushroom cloud, and maybe it's just a fire. Things are okay. Right.
I like the I like that. I like the little misdirect here with her vomiting. You're like, whoa, wait, because because the 2019 audience knows. Okay, people are gonna vomit. I've seen Battlestar Galactica, right? Have you seen K9 Widowmaker? Anytime people get dosed with radiation, you're like, oh, they're gonna throw up, right?
Right. That's a part of it.
Yeah,
but yeah, she's just preggers,
just preggers, and this just starts happening.
Oh man.
Right. And this woman's name is Ludmila, right?
I think so.
Yep, Ludmila, and her she is pregnant, and that's the way they do this explosion here. You see it, and then boom, it rocks the apartment building.
Oh yeah, that shockwave comes after.
Awesome.
And then evidently this is a very good depiction of what it looked like from witness accounts.
Down to the button.
Down to the button.
That's what I hear. The control room.
Oh, I was talking about just the look of the fire and the pillar.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, mile high, I heard.
Yeah, it went all the way fucking up into the atmosphere. And that's evidently the air itself ionizing in a column that just goes straight up. So you already get a sense of how high up all of this pollutants are going.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, not good. And then there was we cut right to the control room.
Yeah. You said that even the buttons were modeled after the actual control room?
Yeah. I guess this part of the set piece was pretty damn accurate, is what I'm hearing.
Oof. So scary. Anytime you see a control room this big and there are that many flashing sounds and beeps and everything's going, you're like, oh, fuck, everything's fucked. I don't understand it, but I know everything's bad.
Yeah, this is not good. What have we done here? What's the problem? They gave a lot of props to, I forget his name. I think it's Luke Hull, I believe, is a production designer. So shout out to Luke Hull because he got a lot of the exacting details of some of this stuff down.
Good fucking job.
But this stuff is incredible. This is really something. This next scene.
Oh yeah, we zoom in on Dyatlov's face, which you've got to imagine. I mean, everybody in this room knows a disaster has just occurred. It's just about the scale of it that you don't understand yet. But the way we zoom in on Dyatlov, I feel like is a little bit of a betrayal that deep down he worries it's something more.
Yep. It's a really slick shot. It moves from a Dutch angle to a straight on close up of his head, and then it sort of fades into white. It's really slick choice there. But it starts with they're full on in oh shit mode. Dyatlov assumes it's bad, but not as bad as reported. He learns that the core, he doesn't really learn the cores no more, but he just, it exploded, right? That's when, let me try to pronounce his name. Sorry.
We got a fucking Dostoevsky book.
Perevchenko. I'm saying it wrong, but I'm trying. Perevchenko comes in and said it exploded. The core exploded, right? And Dyatlov's like, impossible. Physically impossible.
Right. What he's thinking at this point is that it's the coolant tank, I believe it is, that was full of hydrogen that blew up.
Correct.
But they have, this is such a telling moment when he runs in and straight up says, no, the reactor's gone. The reactor exploded. And he's like, he's just delusional and in shock. Get him out of here. That's not true.
Right.
Just completely dismisses it, even though they get the truth right here.
What I like about this is that it's a control system tank went up, is what Dyatlov believes. And he believed it went up because it got backfilled or filled, however it works, not an engineer, with hydrogen, which is a problem. So it blows up. And of course, Dyatlov's like, let's call the fire brigade. Now, Perevchenko is feeling a little bit differently about this. And based on what I had heard on the podcast and a little bit of the reading I'd done, this is not an impossible conclusion for Dyatlov to come to at this point. And the reason is because I guess the layout of this thing is that they have 4 reactor rooms separated by these gigantically long hallways. Mm-hmm. And because of the way the explosion went straight up, it didn't have, if you when you imagine a nuclear explosion, you imagine maybe the whole place just being destroyed, right? If you dropped a nuclear bomb on this place, it'd be gone. I guess what I was hearing is that the assumption here was that because of the way the explosion sent a lot of its energy straight up in a mile high, that this little shake, boom, like that in the room and like the dust falls was like, okay, that's bad, but not the end of the world.
Right. Like it's easy to perceive it that way.
It's easy to perceive it that way based on the way the shockwave hits this room and they're not all on fire, right? Because of the nature of the way, right? Because of the nature of the way the core went up, it was not unreasonable for Dyatlov to at this point assume that it wasn't total devastation, because he's like, well, we're still here, right?
It's true.
But anyway, he continues on, Dyatlov, to be clear, as giving orders as if it's the control system tank that went up.
Right. And his main concern is getting water into the reactor to get around the fuel rods. He's like, we have to get water pumping in there. That's the priority. That rules over all, because he still thinks that the reactor is intact and they have to cool it down.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's standard operating procedure for a lot of this stuff is feed water that they use to keep things cool, right?
Right.
Not an engineer for the second time tonight.
Oh, yeah.
But it's almost like...
By the way, did some research, did some reading on RBMK nuclear reactors. Yeah. Couldn't tell you much. I kind of know what it looks like now, and I know steam and water are involved. I went to school for English, all right? Okay.
Listen, I know how my Corsair water cooler works on my CPU. I get that.
and I know that sometimes I go down and smack it with a hammer when it's not acting right.
Here's the good news. If my CPU shits the bed, I do not destroy my neighborhood, which is pretty awesome, right? A little different. Not really going to say I have not going to say there's any synergy between these skill sets, but I get it, I guess, in a storied way.
What I'm trying to say is I'm the man for the job, okay? Chief engineer.
Hire me right now. Feed water, sure, yeah. Pump it in, turn the valves.
Yikes. Fucking the next 3 Mile Island.
It's like, I know guys who went to school for like, boiler room operation, man, that stuff's intense. All that pressure. Nuts getting blown off it at 700 pounds per square inch, blowing holes in walls. Bananas.
Right. And long, complicated story short, the initial explosion was exactly that. It was a steam explosion. It was actually the water becoming superheated inside the core, blowing out the core, and then that caused a much worser exposure and further explosion, I think.
Worser. That's a good one.
Worser.
He says,
I'm from Worser.
He says he studies English, and then he says worser.
Hey, you get on the hot seat, you fucks out there. You come in here and do my job, huh?
So anyway, cut to Ludmila. Oh, wait, the pieces of rubble on fire. The graphite.
Have we already come to that yet?
Just heated. Like no, we get a quick look of it, and then we get that really amazing moment with the call, the fire brigade call. I love that moment.
That's honestly the main thing about the graphite, which again can't go into super scientific detail on it. But the reason seeing it laying on the ground like that is so terrifying because the graphite is literally the thing around the control rods themselves. That is from the absolute interior of the core. If you're seeing pieces of graphite all over the place, that means the core is gone. That doesn't mean, a tank exploded or something outside of it, something near it. No, the very interior, absolute center of the core has been blown apart.
Cool.
Terrifying.
Awesome. Oh, hey, in the chat, Galloway says he works in boiler rooms. That's pretty cool. I did not know that. Are you a boiler engineer, Justin? You don't have to say if you're not comfortable, but I'm curious as to like the whole feed water process and using water lines to keep, crazy equipment cool. It's a really interesting. I'm not gonna lie. There's the nerd part of my brain that became really interested in this whole process.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, like I want to still do more research. I hereby promise by episode 2 I'll have a slightly better understanding of these processes.
Yeah. The good news is unless you're most people aren't like. Well, there might be a small percentage of people might be watching Chernobyl to know the exacting details of the of the process of the nuclear reactor, but most people probably just want to know about the chaos in the human story, I guess.
Yeah, the stuff that matters. Yeah, true.
Yeah, right. You're like, I don't care about everyone's like faces boiling off. I want to know about the reactor conditions. You weirdo?
What did the valves read?
Tell me what kind of instrument panels they had. I really need to know the details of this stuff.
Hey, get this melting guy out of the way. I want to know about the graphs.
I get it. It's painful, but tell me about the pressure gauges.
Ugh, worst critic ever.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of good stuff following here, of course. So we see Ludmila's man is on the fire brigade, right?
Indeed. And he is called out, and he thinks, much like he's probably just been told, it's a roof fire. It's we'll go out there and we'll contain it. It's not a big deal. Probably not even going to take that long.
Women's intuition here, Ludmila. She doesn't like this. Doesn't like the color. Doesn't like any of this. And he's like, no, it's a roof fire. It's fine.
Right. And one thing that I like, I feel like they show it very subtly and very well with her character, is that she was already awake when the explosion happened. I think a lot of people were woken by the shockwave and didn't really consciously hear it or see it and just look out the window and they see a distant fire. Like, I think she's somebody who's like, that shockwave shook our apartment all the way from there. Like, is it really just a roof fire? Is that really it? And I think that's another reason we see a lot of characters with their kids outside later on, just thinking, it's a distant fire. It's nothing. Yep. They didn't feel that initial massive shockwave.
And then we go to, I believe, 1:35 a.m., right? Alarms blaring. So remember, the episode is titled 1:23:45. So we're talking a little over 10 minutes later. So things are moving quickly for the people at Ground Zero.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So scary. Who are we following through the hallway? Is it? I think it's Valera.
I believe so. Oh, not going to lie. This is going to be a difficult
This is the hardest part of this is the names.
The hardest part.
It's really hard. I believe he is referred to as Valera when he gets there and he starts talking to this guy. If not, I apologize. But he's talking to, I believe, Parafchenko again. And they say, he asks of the dosimeter, right?
Mm-hmm. And they only have a very small one. It goes up to, I think, 3.6.
I love that Parafchenko is like, is it war? Are we being bombed?
Yeah, he's like, are they bombing us?
Right.
I mean, that's what you would think.
They is only one they. That's U.S. of A.
Oh, yeah.
That's the assumption here, which is crazy, right?
Right. But I mean, on either side, in that time, if you were in America in a nuclear facility and everything started rocking and shaking, and you heard distant explosions, you'd be like, is that Soviet planes? Are we getting bombed?
My assumption would be industrial sabotage, but sure, maybe planes too, like an agent got in there. That's too much James Bond. Agent got in there and fucking set the reactor core and destroyed Denver or something. I don't know. But, and so essentially, Parafchenko gets ordered to help get some people out. And as he's going up the stairs, he just vomits. And you go, oh no. Like
it's already everywhere.
10 minutes, Matt. That's what's insane about this whole thing. It's 1:23:45 is the episode. At 1:35 a.m. with alarms blaring, we see a character already succumbing to radiation poison.
Oh, and it's a quick...
He gets vomited on. I'm sorry, he doesn't vomit. But the same, it doesn't matter. The point is made, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's a very quick moment. I actually had to go back and rewatch the scene to catch it. But I think it's Akimov who says it in the control room just after the explosion. I think even before they've determined or made the assumption that it was the hydrogen control tank, he says, do you taste that? Do you taste metal? Like he's already saying that inside the control room.
Right.
I mean, seconds later.
Yeah. So we start following the man who's looking for Victor. And he finds Victor, and Victor is done.
Oh, yeah.
This is so intense, man.
Just already so burned up.
I mean, and you can see the fallout in the air.
Yeah, the floating dust particles. Oh, God.
It's just, what's so insane about this is just trying to wrap your head around this whole idea. It's just, and this is where if we had like some sort of expert on, we could say, like, tell me about this radiation stuff, man. This is bananas. Like, their clothes are fine, but his face is burned. Like the radiation is, the air is so ionized that his face is just burnt. It's in seeing the fallout, you go, good gravy, man. This is too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's really, I could be wrong about this, and I'm almost certain in 1986, there's not really any truly reliable anti-radiation suits. Like you're never really safe. It might minimize it some, but I don't think there's any suit you can step into that completely guards you from radioactivity.
Right. Fun fact, steam is what caused the reactor to explode. The water vaporized to steam, causing the explosion. Justin, our boiler expert here, by the way. Also, fun fact, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but my friend would always tell me this, but isn't steam invisible? I believe there's steam and then there's the vapor. And you see the vapor, not the steam. Steam is literally invisible. Oh, okay. I think that's the truth. I feel like a boiler guy told me that once. He said, when we say steam, we don't really mean steam. We mean the vapor that you see in the air. Superheated steam. Right. That's what he's saying. Mm. So yeah, superheated steam you don't see. God, imagine that. You just turn into a puddle. You don't even see it.
I mean, I think it was Jason Curry also in the chat bringing up about, steamships. It was so common for steamships in the late 1800s or 1800s just blow up all the fucking time. Steam trains.
Yeah, Justin, it can cut your arm off without you knowing it's there.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Oof. So this thing is getting out of control rather quickly. And Victor tells them to get, I think it's Holdemachuk. The K is silent, right? Holdemachuk. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't have the dialectic to handle the true Russian stuff.
It's hard.
But before he does that, he looks out and he sees the tanks destroyed.
Right. I mean, he looks out and just sees not just the tanks, but it's. I think he's looking out over that whole half of the building that's collapsed.
Right.
Because I think they're still operating off of this assumption that this is some isolated explosion inside of the building that is causing a very dangerous chain reaction, but it's still, it's something we can isolate. It's something we can get our hands around. Whereas, we follow this character to kind of get a look at just the exterior and the scope of this. And it's so much bigger than they're assuming it is back in the control room.
And the inkling, the information I got from the HBO pod was that, again, what I said earlier, there are these 4 big buildings with these really long hallways separating them, and it was one of the buildings that got it, which is why the sense of urgency there was a lot different than it was, say, a building 3 buildings away.
Right.
Because
effects. For them, it's just alarms and
a little
shaking.
rock. Right.
Yeah.
I always wonder that. Chernobyl, it'd be fascinating to think about, and this is where I would love to talk to somebody who knows about nuclear energy, but would it always have a propensity to blow straight up into the atmosphere? I mean, it's a mile up. That's high. Or what if it didn't? What if it blew like sort of your traditional hydrogen bomb, so to speak, and it was like a more of a radius? Obviously, there's still going to be, because it's explosion. It can't channel. It's not channeling straight up only like a lightsaber, right? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Knowing nothing, that doesn't make sense to me. But I wonder, had it blown more, say, horizontally than vertically, would it have been treated much differently? I'm assuming it would have been.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, it would be. I think it would just. It's a more understandable disaster for the human eye to look at. Like, you understand an explosion like that. I think that's part of what makes this so alien and so terrifying. Is it doesn't have a mushroom cloud. It doesn't have this big fiery fireball that's consuming the entire building. It just looks like a bad building fire with kind of a weird light thing going up in the sky. You don't really know what to make of it.
Sure.
And so the threat is a little harder to perceive.
Right, absolutely. Rosalind Harmon, I can honestly say I do not know a guy who might know about nuclear physics. However, everyone would be dead if it was horizontal. Yeah, probably. It's a safe assumption. A mile would have wiped them all out. And then maybe you do the rope it off. Call it a day.
Get out the velvet ropes. Tell everybody go home.
Rope it off. Turn it into a museum. Like disgusting pig Americans. I'm joking. All right. So we're moving on here to the cut back to Dyatlov. He gets back to the control room. He's still acting as if the control room system tank is the issue. I need water in my reactor core.
That's it. That's all he thinks. That's the priority.
That's the priority, because that's the standard operating procedure here. Now, not knowing enough about these tanks and the technology makes it challenging for me to sort of sympathize why he is in so much denial about the reality of what's happening. Part of me does lend him a little bit of credence because he's not right there, right?
Right.
Now, that starts to evaporate as he becomes more unreasonable. But in the beginning, I'm like, oh, okay. But this is where we start getting into the dosimeter and the Röntgen, I believe is the word. It's German as fuck.
Well, the problem here too is, and what I also think is really interesting with the dosimeter is, this is where we get the introduction of some hard facts. I mean, at least it is best that they know at this point that the dosimeter says 3.6, which is maxed out, but this is a very small dosimeter. And he, Dyatlov says, well, it's not great, but it's not terrible. And what I find really interesting about that is that at the end of the show, when they bring up the same exact hard fact, the numbers, that it's Jared Harris's character. Sorry, I don't have his Russian name right off the top of my head. Legasov. He says, well, that's significant. He's like, that's not as bad.
He orders evacuation.
Yeah. He says, that's significant and we should, evacuate.
Right.
And it's the interpretation of the same fact, because everybody likes to talk about opinions and facts, but at the end of the day, the way you receive and then act on a fact is still an interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. Like, the fact might not change, but what you do with that can change and can be wrong, could be right, it can be interpreted all sorts of different ways. And we see multiple characters hear the same fact and go, "Oh, that's okay. It could be worse." And other characters go, "No, this merits an extreme reaction right now."
Right. Röntgen, I believe is how it's said. All right. So here's something I find interesting about dosimeters versus, say, what's the other? Is it a Geiger counter? No. One is for vibrations in the earth. What's the other one I'm thinking? I think a Geiger. No, Geiger is radiation. The seismograph or whatever is from the movie Tremors. Shit.
I remember Pierce Brosnan used it in Dante's Peak, dude.
I was sort dosimeter. I know people in the medical profession know what these are. People who handle X-rays, things of this nature. But I guess this is exposure over time, whereas a Geiger goes, here's how much radiation is here.
In this room right now.
In this room right now. Whereas this is, here's how much radiation you're receiving in doses over time, per hour or something. I don't know the exact measurement, which I think is fascinating because it's like, good Lord. When we start getting these numbers later, I almost want to vomit, to be perfectly frank.
Oh, God, for real.
Brutal. But that's where, not great, not terrible. We did everything right. That's an interesting quote in this movie.
Right. It's almost like this pleading with like fate of like, well, we did everything right. Why should something bad happen?
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that's a fascinating prospect because sometimes you can do everything right and it doesn't matter. Right. And it's funny.
It's nobody's fault.
It's nobody's fault. And it's a really fascinating moment in this show to observe these men coming to that conclusion as it goes on.
Right.
So 1:30 a.m., Matthew, the emergency vehicles are heading in. The fire brigade is getting to work. Misha is the man in question. He picks up a piece of the graphite. Vasily does not. Vasily, by the way, is Ludmila's man.
Yeah. That moment where the guy picks it up and is just looking at it, I was already like, oh, God, put it down. Get away from it. Don't fucking touch it. You might as well just fucking kiss a uranium rod.
It's brutal. It's just, I know so little about this stuff. I find it so fascinating that you can reach down, pick something up, hold it, put it down,
over in your hand.
Then later your hand starts burning up.
Oh, God.
Whoa, man.
Because with radiation, crazy. And again, I'm speaking way out of school, but it's not just that it's burning you; it is already on like a molecular level changing the bonds of the fucking molecules in your body. Like they're dissolving essentially over time.
Yeah,
so creepy. Radiation's fucking terrifying.
Geesh, man. Unless you're but you know what? I have seen this, Matthew, in the MCU before, but if you get a hard enough dose of gamma, you become the Incredible Hulk.
Fucking kick ass.
Right?
Hell yeah.
Why don't we just work on that?
So many puking Eric Bana's getting just blasted with radiation. Like, it's not working.
Is it Eric Bana?
You know, in the original one.
Whoa. I thought you said Banner, and I was thinking, no, it's Bruce Banner. Wow, that was crazy.
It's, Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner, Eric Bana. God, I didn't even make the connection. Eric Bana, Bruce Banner. Anyway, he should just stick to better movies. But the fire brigade gets to work. And then back inside, we see that our guy Victor has to come to his injuries because that man in the hallway just puts him down. Ooh, right? Is that Poroshenko? I'm sorry. And then the three men just leave. Outside, we see Misha's hand burning now. The after effects of holding the irradiated graphite or whatever.
Yeah. And that's what, 3 minutes later? Something like that?
Not long. What I love about this is there's a lot of moments where we have Vasily, he's our POV for this fire brigade.
Right.
And we see Vasily, he's really suspicious, man. Like, they do a good job of showing him looking around and wondering what is going on here. And I like that. I like that we get that in this episode.
Right. Because,
people
you got
to
imagine.
Wait a minute.
Right. Because even, these firefighters, they work, they are firefighters, I think, for this nuclear facility and all of the buildings around it. And, they don't know the fucking ins and outs of radiation or obviously nuclear engineering. But I think that's got to always be in the back of your mind. If you're not just a regular firefighter who goes and puts out house fires or, apartment fires, but that you work for a nuclear facility and
sure.
you see a collapsed whole side of the facility like this, you've got to, in the back of your mind, be thinking, is this okay? Like, is this just a fire or is this a lot more dangerous?
Right. In the chat, they're asking about Russian accents and why weren't they done? Why are they British? Good question.
I heard it was a conscious choice because it just seemed distracting. That evidently the accents from this area in Ukraine are very, in at least American minds, stereotypically Russian. I don't know if he talked about it on the podcast, but I saw a quote from Craig Mazin where he's like, I didn't want it to turn into a Boris Natasha bit. And he's like, I didn't want that to be distracting. So I just let them speak in their natural accent.
Yeah. There's that. And then there's the part of where when you are performing, you don't want to be considering the accent more than the character and in the moment, right?
Totally.
Anything that can distract you from a better performance is best left avoided. And it's interesting because I thought to myself, is that a bad choice? And in minutes you stop thinking about it.
Yeah. You just go with the story, which is more important.
Yep. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think even a choice you could make, I almost feel like taking that shitty middle of the road of like, let's get some American and British actors and then we'll coach them on a Russian accent and we'll do that. It's either that, it's either just fuck an accent and just let them perform as they perform or get straight up Russian actors and do subtitles. Like, I think it's like that. You got to do one or the other. Doing the middle road thing kind of gets silly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we go back to Pripyat, and we get POV on Ludmila. And she looks on, and neighbors begin gathering around, and they say, oh, join us, we're going to get a look from the railroad. They're kind of treating this like business as usual. Now, she saw the initial vault up into the sky, so she's probably feeling a little bit differently than these people are. Right. And they are trying to reassure her that Vasily will be fine. And I'll tell you, Ludmila, she's got that pregnant thing. She's got strong instincts right now for danger. Her spidey senses are tingling.
Oh, yeah.
Tingling.
I think it's her neighbor's husband who's all like, what are you talking about? Dangerous. It's a fire over there and we're over here. Like just completely shrugging it off right now.
Right. Which normally you go, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Not with this kind of facility, though.
No. There is no, it's only this. When there's that word, it's, don't worry, it's only is never said in a nuclear power plant.
Right.
You just don't say that.
I'm sure it's only this.
Right, sure. Right, okay, if you say so.
Dude, another great scene here of, I can't remember this guy's name, but
which one?
The scientist who went and actually looked down into the reactor core, and we get that terrifying shot of just basically an empty hole.
At the end. Akimov.
No, right here. We're about 22 minutes in, where they go and they actually open up the metal door and go down to look into the reactor.
Oh yeah, that's the original guy with the P name. That's really hard for me to do, I think.
Yeah, there we go. But he looks down in there, and there's nothing there. There's no rods. There's no containment of any kind. You just kind of see a whole fucking massive blue fire and a massive dust plume of radiation firing up into the sky, and that's it. And he runs back into the control room here, and it's such a moment where he goes, "It's gone." I looked right into it. There's nothing there. I looked into the core. And Dyatlov is like, did you lower the rods or not?
Yeah.
And he's just like, what? And then pukes because of his extreme radiation poisoning. And Dyatlov just writes it off. Take him to the infirmary, whatever. He's not making sense.
Yep.
So 2 times now, we've had somebody who had eyes on it say, it's gone. The reactor is destroyed. Right. And he is still not taking that information.
I think it's Perovchenko. I think that's the character in question. But it's Dyatlov and Akimov. Akimov is the guy with the glasses and the stash. Dyatlov has the stash, no glasses. It's a little confusing. It's because, what's hard about this is that the outfits are all the same. So it's really hard to sometimes differentiate them. On top of it, you're dealing with very complicated names for a American person to figure out. So we're doing the best we can with the names. And the other guy in this is Toptunov, right? He's the thinner blonde guy.
There you go.
Because it's Toptunov and Akimov that release the things by hand at the end. But yeah, the puker, I thought it was Perovchenko. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not sure who it is. He might just be somebody that's unnamed. I don't know.
Is he a lightweight or a middleweight?
He unified the belts with his victory. But Dyatlov says, I've seen worse when they're referring to the guy's injuries. Ruptured condenser lines. In other words, a ruptured condenser line is something that would cause this injury.
Dude, and that strikes me. I don't know how you feel about it. It strikes me as full denial, and that you have not seen worse than this. That's something you're mostly telling to yourself in that moment. I've seen people exposed. I've seen worse than that. That's not that bad. Like, let's not think about it. Get him out of here.
I'll tell you, Dyatlov is not painted in a pretty light.
Right.
There is a real lack of empathy here from him, and I don't know if that's reality, but if it is, it seems like a true lack of empathy. Akimov, everyone else seems to be pretty human to me, whereas Dyatlov has a bit of a sociopathic way about him, and it's really disturbing.
But I don't think it's entirely unrealistic. I think when you see people
I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. Yeah, no, I think it's very realistic. Well, what I mean by that is that's a dangerous proposition to be working for this man.
Totally. That if you're in denial in this, he's going to send you into life and death situations, not knowing that he's sending you into life and death situations.
And maybe sociopath's a tough way to say it. It could be there's some narcissism there, which could create a denial, right? There's nothing a narcissist hates more than being wrong.
Right.
I mean, they just can't admit it. And it's never their fault. That's for fucking sure. And I find that very fascinating. And there's a lot of that coming up here, which I found really compelling, and I can't wait to get to. But anyway, essentially, Akimov is in shock here at this whole thing. because Dyatlov says, call in the day shift. Come on into work.
And he's like, oh yeah, come on. We need electricians, mechanics. We need bodies. We need people in here working on this.
I'd be like, it's a blizzard out. Call your baggers in.
Right.
Are you sure?
Make them drive.
Right. Are you sure we should be doing this?
Oh,
I think that's the best move at this point. A much lesser reason, but I know I've worked with people who are ruthless about shit like that. Anyway, Kima picks up the phone.
That's it. Then we get a little look in at the, I would imagine, the Pripyat hospital nearby.
Before we move on, Akimov picking up the phone. What do you think about that?
The fact that he still does it, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
Remember, he doesn't know what we know.
True. But I think a lot of these guys in this moment just kind of defer to authority because they don't know what else to do and they're fucking scared. And they also, I think they're all kind of having that intuition of this is probably worse than we realize, but they don't know how much worse and they don't know how to assess it. I'm just going to do what Dyatlov told me to do.
Yep, I agree. I don't think it's unrealistic for him to pick up the phone. And I don't think it's morally bad for him to pick up the phone either.
Right.
I doubt he'll be casting much moral judgment here. Maybe a little bit on some of these on some of the brass.
Yeah.
But later, we get a view of a doctor's hospital in Pripyat. We see a nurse who asks the doctor if they stock iodine pills. And he's wondering why she would ask such a thing. And
she looks out at the fire at the nuclear power station.
Yes. I find it interesting that the two female perspectives are feeling this is worse than it is compared to any of the other male perspectives.
Right.
Interesting.
They're noticing it,
or they're just feeling like it's worse than. That's an interesting proposition. Is it machismo, denial, maybe all of it?
Yeah,
fucking, it's nothing. We got this.
And the
girl's like, no. This is a mile high explosion. Did you see that part? I definitely saw that part from my window. Did you see it in your safe bunker? Because I saw it.
And also, it's a thing that I imagine that will come up more as the show goes on. But I think another stereotype of Soviet Russia is that it was so much propaganda and people didn't know the truth of the government. But also at the end of the day, the people knew they were being lied to a lot as well, and were therefore skeptical about a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And I think as much as they were believing some misinformation, they were kind of always aware that there's a lot of misinformation around and floating around you. So I think, I feel like it's pretty natural for a lot of people in this situation to have a very skeptical eye of what the official account is.
I was listening to a podcast a long time ago, and I don't remember who was talking, but they were talking about. It was a woman, I remember specifically, talking about Russia being of Russian heritage, and she was saying that a lot of people, that especially grew up in that time, were just super skeptical of everything.
Yeah,
because of the propaganda of the machine, so to speak, and that was just it made it cagey, man, cagey. I like that.
Yeah, I
appreciate that way to be like, I don't know about that, dude. But God, I wish I could remember. It's going to drive me nuts all night. Hopefully, I don't let it distract me. We cut to, how do you say this guy's name? Brukhanov?
Oh God, I just had it too. Damn it, Brukhanov.
Brukhanov.
No, I got this. Here we go.
Go.
Brukhanov.
I feel like the Y is silent, or was something silent in there.
Brukhanov.
Sauce curls.
The other guy's name is so much easier to say. Fomin.
Yeah, Fomin. Sauce curls, I call him. I really like this next scene.
Oh yeah,
this is incredible.
Where they have Dyatlov in there.
Oh, I love this.
Excellent.
So this is pretty important because it's important to remember that he didn't leave the facility and go far, far away and get in a car.
No.
That's because you almost feel like, whoa. And this is kind of my point, which is these guys don't know what happened. And they're in the same spot, so to speak. They're just not in one of those nearby buildings. They're in this control room, this sort of ward room, as it were. Kind of wild.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And I imagine this building's not terribly far from that.
Right. That's why it's designed for fallout. But it's 2:30 a.m. Who else knows about this? Have you called Fomin? Of course. I want you to call him the phone call that leads to this meeting. And then I'm going to say Brukhanov and Fomin meet with Dyatlov. And Brukhanov says, I take it the safety test was a failure.
I love him being like, of course I can't be blamed. I was sleeping.
Dude. So real quick here, I take it the safety test was a failure. Boy, how dreadfully ironic that you were testing safety features and this happened.
Yeah, during the safety test.
That's brutal.
And also
that's like
deferral.
It almost seems like a fake movie plot where it's like, oh, we don't have phasers on our starship, but we're going to go out for a little test drive, and then we get attacked.
No.
You're like, are you kidding me? They attacked us during a training mission when we don't have phasers? No, they didn't. That's unrealistic. Oh, it's totally realistic in Chernobyl. Doing a safety test, and the thing went haywire.
All to shit. But no, one of the things I love about the scene, it happens very quick and pretty subtly, but a lot of deferral of blame.
I love it.
Where, I think it's Brankov who's like, it's Chief Engineer Foman who, wanted you to run this test, correct? Or actually, no, I think it's even Foman who says to...
I got the dialogue if you want it.
What's that? You got it?
Yeah. So, Baruknikov says, of course, I'm not responsible. I was sleeping. And then Dyatlov says, we ran the test exactly as Fomin approved.
Exactly.
And then later, the tank is quite large. It's the only logical explanation. Of course, Deputy Chief Dyatlov was directly supervising the test.
Exactly.
It's like everyone's passing the buck right here.
Oh, yeah. We're all pointing fingers.
I
find
find
this standoff of pointed fingers right here.
What I find so fascinating about this moment is... I don't think this is super unrealistic. I don't think this is. I also don't think this is unique to the Soviet people of the time.
Totally. Yeah.
I think it's very on point for people who are a little underhanded and kind of slimy. And that's
a little bit
the way these three guys strike me. These three right here. They're kind of like, they rub me the wrong way. All three of them.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you what's fascinating about this whole thing is. On the one hand, you have these guys discussing, no, it's nothing, it's contained. And then they're like, it's not my fault, though.
but it's also not my fault. You did it.
I like this. I like this. It's almost like recognition of your own kind of bullshit. Where you're like, it's no big deal. We got it under control. Nothing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're doing the feed water. We're doing the stuff. We're doing the things, guys. We're going to take care of it. But no, it's not my fault.
But I didn't do it.
I mean, it wasn't me. It's no big deal. It's not my fault.
Not me, though. Definitely him.
So all three of these ding-dongs are pointing fingers at each other.
Oh, totally. And I think it's, again, Bryankov who, when he hears the fact about the 3.6 reading, he's like, well, it's not bad, but it's not horrific. Again, just like, well, not great, but that's something manageable. This isn't a total fucking disaster yet.
Yeah, that's funny. Apparently, in the chat, I'm being told the what did he put? X something CD chart. Let me get back to the chat. The XKCD radiation dose chart is great for visualizing the amount of radiation these people were exposed to. There you go. Yeah. Nobody wants to get shot, they're saying in the chat. What do you think of that sentiment? Think that's American propaganda?
I think at times it can be exaggerated, but at the same time, plenty of people were dragged off and shot for this kind of shit.
Yeah, it's true.
And I mean, hell, we find out what happened to Dyatlov at the very beginning of the show. He's sentenced to 10 years in a prison labor camp.
Prison labor. Boosh. Yeah, crazy. But, all right, so we wrap up with these boys kind of pointing fingers, but this is where the 3.6 Rontgen per hour comes up, right? That's not great, but it's not horrifying, which is reaffirmed here. And Fomin assumes it's from the feed water, right? Irradiated feed water, to which Dyatlov affirms. He says yes. So they agree on this. So they decide to limit shifts going forward to 6 hours at a time. So they're going to continue business as usual here. And he says, oh, get the good meters to keep our men safe, right?
Get the good. Spare no expense.
Right. This is fascinating, man. This entire piece, this, as we've seen the premise laid out, lies or denial. What's your take on this general theme and how we're seeing it start to play out at this point, which is about halfway through the episode?
Oh, right. Again, well, this is when we kind of have that parallel sequence of the people watching and having the actual fallout dust landing on them, and they're just completely oblivious to the danger of it. And also with the scene of the one scientist who was exposed to the core as well, who's also dying, much like Victor was, getting some of the rain. No, actually, I guess it's not rain. It's from the firefighters. The hose is the water starting to pour down on them. And I think it's such a good little visual comparison of the people outside of this far enough away. The civilians have absolutely no idea. And the guys inside are starting to see that even the work being done to put this out is nowhere near enough. Like it's futile.
Yeah.
And I think that is the heart of this first episode of how much this is beyond all of our efforts to handle it, to contain it.
Yeah, man, that's a really good point. I put up if you're enjoying this on YouTube, I did shunt over that radiation dose chart.
And, I found that too.
Oof, man, there's a lot of little boxes on there, but using a CRT monitor for 1 year, yippee! Not as much as a dental X-ray. Airplane flight from New York to LA. So sleeping next to someone is very low. Living within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant is a little bit more. Eating one banana? What?
Dude, you know what's a little scary is that I lived, let's see, that would probably be 5 miles away from Duke Power Plant. I think the third or fifth largest nuclear power plant in all of America. Growing up, I'm like, I wonder how irradiated I am.
Oof. Dental X-ray, extra dose from spending 1 day in an area with higher than average natural background radiation. Airplane flight. Oh, so be a hermit, basically, I'm learning today. All the doses in the blue chart combined. Extra dose to Tokyo in weeks following Fukushima, living in a stone brick or concrete building for a year. Interesting.
Woof.
That's like I do all of these now.
Oh, fuck. I eat so many bananas. Oh, shit.
What's up with radiation bananas? Somebody in the chat figure that out.
I mean, there's pretty much nothing on Earth.
It's potassium.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. About to say, there's nothing on our Earth that's probably 100% free of any form of radiation. I'm like, it's out there.
The chart's interesting because it shows you maximum dose permitted for U.S. radiation workers.
Yeah.
Dose from spending an hour on the grounds at the Chernobyl plant in 2010.
Yeesh.
Okay, let's do quick math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 25. How many times is 3 going to 25? 8. Okay, so in 8 hours, according to this chart in 2010, you would have hit your maximum radiation dose permitted in a year. 8 hours at Chernobyl in 2010.
Damn.
Dude.
Damn.
That is bananas, which are radioactive.
Oh, God.
Yeah. This chart
there is no escape.
This chart is really oof. So there's blue, green, and red. Red, of course, is the worst. There's the fatal dose of red. It goes on and on. I'm not going to derail the show entirely with this. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So, radiation dose chart. It's worth taking a look at. It's really creepy.
Oh, God.
It's creepy, to say the least.
It's terrifying.
Well, these guys say that they got everything under control. And, of course, back at Pripyat, we get probably the most haunting moment of this episode, right?
Oh, of the everyone looking up at the cloud.
This is really something, this moment. Visually, it's really incredible.
Right. Because it's that dramatic irony of us, the audience, knowing the real threat and watching all these people just sit there and soak it in, literally soaking it in, and they don't know.
Yeah. They're just having a Chernobyl fire watch party.
Pretty much.
And in the fallout, I keep calling it fallout. I know it's ash, but it is fallout, right? It's all irradiated. That's the point. Oh, yeah. That's why it's so
heavily
creepy.
Irradiated. What a great shot too of seeing the ash getting caught in their hair. Like it's just everywhere. It's just getting into everything.
It's unreal, man. It creeps me out. Holy shit, my boy Christian Riley's in the chat. That is a good dude right there. Everybody say hi to Christian Riley in the chat. He's a good friend of mine. I just hung out with him on Sunday.
Oh.
Mr. Christian Riley. He has Odin's beard. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, this is pretty visually striking, this moment. Oof. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, yeah. This is my favorite visual of this episode. because just the contrast of us knowing what's really happening.
I know,
and that horror, like it makes you want to like shout to them, like get away from this, don't be out in this.
Oh, it's creepy, man. It's just so haunting, and the dancing and the playing. There's something really and look in the shot of the children. There's a when it's like there's a moment where it looks like there's a ton of it.
It looks definitely
like it looks they're kicking the sand of it.
I think it's starting to collect some. Yeah,
I would imagine.
It's
like when you hear when volcanoes go up and then ash is like 75 to 100 miles, just covered cars in it. Like when a volcano goes up, all the ash that comes down.
Oh yeah, I know when Mount St. Helens blew, people in Portland, there was so much ash that people were scraping up jars of it to sell to fucking tourists.
Truth be told, I didn't remember the name of it, didn't want to guess, and I was afraid to be stupid. I'm glad you were brave.
Here's your lifeline.
I was fearful in that moment, and I backed off. I'm a bad podcaster. Which is hilarious because I make like 10 mistakes per episode on them average.
On a good one.
I mean, with the pronunciations of this one alone, I'm probably up to 30.
Oh, God, easily. Both
Pripyat. I got that one down.
Pripyat.
Yep.
Fulman.
Let's go back to the plant.
Yeah, and this is fuck. What is his name?
The guy
He's the one who found Victor.
No.
And help.
Okay, now this guy's different. There's a different guy with glasses and a mustache. Because
no, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the injured guy.
The injured guy that is found.
Yes.
By the guy with glasses and a mustache. So now you have 3 guys with mustaches. 2 of them have glasses. 1 of them does not.
There you go. The easiest way I think to tell is that none of the mustaches are injured. All the mustache
guys are doing good right up until the end.
Right until then, yeah.
Yeah, I believe this is Sitnikov.
Yeah, but he goes to the scientist who found Victor, and he is now, I mean, he got exposed directly to the core when the other guys went in and looked down at it, and he's already just succumbing to radiation sickness.
Brutal, man.
And he just asks for a cigarette. And he's like, well, what do we do now? And he's like, it's over. Like, it's done. There's no stopping it.
Right. Oh, no, this isn't Sitnikov. This is Boris. Sitnikov's the guy who looks in the reactor at the end.
Oh, okay. Up on the roof.
Yeah. This is brutal. This is a tough scene, too. But he asks for the cigarette, and Boris is just like, do you need help? And he just says it's over.
Yeah. Nothing to be done.
Man, this is rough.
Oh, and this next scene with Vasily and the fire brigade, so fucking good. Where they're
the
basically
rain is
like
amazing too. The visual, there's this. It's interesting. There's talk about embracing the suck, so to speak, which is this moment where you find this man whose goose is cooked, basically. And I'm not trying to make a cute pun. And he asks for a cigarette, and Boris sort of turns his hand up, and the rain starts to fall on his palm, and he looks up. And this is irradiated rain at this point. But even though it is, there's this measure of relief in it. Like both of these men look up and they're just like, oh, this feeling of the rain is just so nice,
Yeah, and just maybe even the notion that the world is not over, that not the entire planet has been destroyed.
I like it.
That's got to be a thought in the back of your mind, like how damaging is this?
Like the sun's going to come up kind of feeling.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. But yeah, fire brigade scene, very orange, very intense.
Oh my God. Yeah. The color palette is terrifying and beautiful all at the same time. But this moment of Vasily, it's maybe the most human moment of the episode to me, because they're basically saying we have to stop using the hoses out here. We got to go in. We got to go inside to put this out. And as they kind of march up that little hill of rubble to go deeper inside, he has that moment where he pauses and he looks at it, and it's another slow motion moment. It actually cuts back again to his wife's face, of her just kind of sitting and looking and nervously thinking about how bad could this really be, as he pauses and looking into the fire. And that's got to be the most scary moment of hesitation of, I don't know truly how bad this is, but this is worse than just some fire, and I don't know if I should go in there. I mean, we've already seen multiple firefighters starting to get sick.
Yep. In Pravik, I believe he's running this crew, orders them to the roof, and the rhythmic dread of the music is incredible. Just the impending inevitability of the music really represents the inevitability of the scene to me.
Like it's just a big churning machine you can't get out of.
Yeah. For sure. Again, the lack of melody really works for me.
Oh, so creepy.
But like you said, Vasily's face is much like this is, if his face was speaking to you, it would say this is much worse than everyone thinks it is.
Yeah. And did you notice how much redder his face was already getting? Like the skin itself, as he's getting red. Everyone's like brightening up.
God, that's bananas to me. Ugh. So we go to 3:30 a.m. Akimov and Toptunov, they're chatting with Boris, I believe. 3:30 a.m. So now we're 2 hours removed from the tragedy. I mean, not removed. 2 hours since it began. We're not removed from it at all. We're right in the middle of it, actually.
Right.
And this is where we get a little more clarity of character here, because we got Glass's mustache, but we do see some distinct differences in the way these men look. One's much more angular than the other.
True. But this is, I think, where Akimov is still kind of following in the same path of Dyatlov, basically saying, all right, our priority is still to get water down into the core. That's what we got to do to prevent a full meltdown. But I think it's Boris who's saying, like, look, we got to start facing the fact that there's not much else we can do here.
Yeah, I found this moment really weird, really interesting, really beautiful, really terrible. I mean, this is really something here. This part of the episode stood out to me, but it's some of the detail is just discussing I believe Boris says the pumps are gone, the electrical is gone. The pumps are gone. Okay.
Gone.
And he did not go to the core, and he won't go to the core.
Yeah. I love that moment where he's like, I will not go in there.
Right.
There's no fucking way you're marching me up to it.
That's a human being, right?
Totally. And right here we have this perfect little clash of one set of people more in denial than the other, and they're still, I think for the sake of trying to feel like they're getting a grasp around it and helping, and also just trying to keep their own feelings subsided about, instead of panicking, let's think about what we can actively do. They're still following kind of the protocol of, all right, so we have to get the water valves on. If there's no electricity to turn them on, we got to do it by hand. And just going through this like whole process of step 1, step 2, step 3. Whereas Boris is already like, no, that's all gone. There's nothing left to do. But do we see them choose to, no, we will go down there and we will release the valves ourselves. Whereas I think Boris is like, that's certain death.
What do you think about this? I mean, you just were telling me, but this is a big moment of the show for me. Is this schism, as it were, between these two sort of competing thought processes? Well, which is, are we to believe that Akimov thinks he can make a difference, or are we to believe what he sort of explicitly says here, which is the following: we have to get water into the core, otherwise there will be a meltdown. If it's true, in other words, if it's true in parentheses that there is no core, then we're dead. 1 million people are dead. Is that what you need to hear? We need to open the valves by hand. He's almost saying it doesn't really matter if we do this or we don't do this.
Right.
Which is really crazy to me.
Yeah. And I think he's just...
And I'm not saying crazy as a pejorative. I'm saying it as an academic, and not as an academic, but in an academic way, to where I'm trying to sort of wrap my head around the thought process.
Right. And I think for him, like I was saying, it's just a matter of, here's the protocol. Here's what I know we can do, or at least we're supposed to do in a situation like this. Might as well do it for the sake of trying. Right.
Because Boris retorts here, and this is an important detail, by suggesting that they'd be pumping water into a ditch because nothing is there. So to simplify this into something visual that perhaps you and I, and maybe even the listener, can wrap their head around, it would be like saying, Matthew, your house is a raging inferno. And there is a hose only a few feet away from your house. Now, you could go there, pick up the hose, and fire it at the house, surely burning yourself and risking certain death, smoke inhalation, something collapses and kills you, most likely is the case. And I'm telling you now, the hose will do nothing.
Right.
I mean, it's a moral victory.
Yeah.
Is it that simple? Or so what I'm trying to differentiate here between these two guys is, are we to believe that Akimov does not know the futility of the situation and that he's hopeful and he goes? Or are we to believe that Akimov knows exactly the situation because he knows Boris is not lying or misunderstanding? We know that Akimov is not Dyatlov, right?
Yeah.
He strikes me as more reasonable at this point. It's like a mind bender. It's a mind bender to me.
We're like, is he marching to his death just knowingly, or does he really think there's a chance that this will work, that this will help?
It's an interesting character study because I don't know. Do we know if Akimov has ever been interviewed? Do we know if he ever said why? I'm assuming he's not. I don't know. I don't want to look up spoilers. That's why I didn't do a lot of research on this.
History spoilers.
You know what I mean? But because I don't know the details, I was like, I don't want to spoil the whole thing. I mean, obviously, I know some of the horrible things that happened, but I've just always kind of, the scene is really something. It really sat with me, and I thought a lot about it.
Right, because I mean, the other like very realistic to me moment about it is when they're leaving. And he's like, "Watch the control panel for us while we're gone," and he's like, "It doesn't work." And he's like, "Well, just watch it. Like, I don't know what else to do. Like, just do that. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. So let's do this." Because I also think there's an underlying understanding that maybe they don't consciously know what the levels of radiation are in the room, but they have seen multiple other engineers and scientists get sick right in front of them in this control room. I think they also kind of are aware that it's probably everywhere in here. Like, we're not escaping radiation poisoning even in the control room.
Yeah. Is this a heroic thing? That's what I struggle with. Obviously, there were a lot of heroes. Like everything, I can't stress this enough. Across all the cultures, there's heroes and villains. And I know that's a simplistic way to state it, but bear with me for sake of this discussion. And there's something in between. There's a spectrum, right? Are we witnessing a heroic deed by these men, despite the fact that they know, it's like, does part of them believe that they're doing the right thing here? Is it even a question of right and wrong? Is it a question of just straight duty and they don't think about that?
Right.
Is it a sense of pride? It's really fascinating to me. And I don't think we're going to get an answer today on the podcast. And I think it's something I really want to come back to as I'm sure we're going to get this sort of thematic thing reoccurring over and over again in this series.
Right.
Just food for thought. We don't need to have the answers tonight, but
I agree. I mean, my feeling on
and
it.
Boris is sad. He cries. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's really devastated when they walk away. And Toptonov doesn't look thrilled either. He's somber, but he goes.
Right. And for me, I still interpret it mostly as they are aware that the likelihood of what they're about to do making any difference is pretty low. But what else are you going to do? You're here. You are in the thick of it. You're some of the only people that are around in the situation of any even slight understanding of it. And you know that this is one of the things that in theory needs to be done. So you do it. Because like you also probably have also in the back of your mind, like I was saying, that you're probably already poisoned anyways.
Got it. That's probably what it is.
Do something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
either stand here and die or go throw, a bucket on the raging fire and die.
There you go. You're dead either way, right?
You're dead either way.
I guess that's a better way to interpret it, which is my initial sort of metaphor about the burning house is not good because, and that metaphor assumes that the secondary choice is life. So maybe that wasn't that was definitely not a fair comparison now that I'm thinking back on it. So I say that was a mistake by me. So yeah, I like kind of where you're at. We could stand here and do nothing. We could go there and do nothing, but either way, we're dead men. That could just be what it is.
Yeah. Go there and attempt something.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
In the words of the philosopher Iron Maiden, die with your boots on.
Shit. Oh shit. The fucking the great bard. What the fuck's the guy's name? I don't even know the lead singer's name.
Did I think I was going to have my first Iron Maiden reference on the Chernobyl podcast? No, I didn't.
Bruce something or other. I don't know.
Bruce Dickinson.
Dickinson.
Made it.
And not to mention, one of the advantages we have to look at this not only with a much more modern eye and modern sensibility, not to mention a cultural difference. I think there's also the beauty of this stuff, and this happens a lot of times when people sort of are discussing, or in some cases, and I hope we're not doing it too much, and that's sort of judging things that happened. There's always the comfort of the chair, right? There's always the lack of in the moment, looking at everything that's happened, knowing the reality. And the more I think about this, the more I think, Akimov is just like, I know the reality. Dyatlov might be denying the reality, but I know it. So I might as well just go do my fucking job because I'm screwed anyway.
Right. And I think all of these things that we're saying are still not consciously, well, not even that, but just like, even if we're dead on, we're exactly correct. I think none of those are conscious thoughts any of these guys are having. It's just that kind of understanding you have of we're probably doomed. Like,
yes,
us
it's
as
not,
individuals right now.
Right. That's a really good point too. It's not like we're sitting here going, oh, these guys are having this philosophical discussion in their heads. No, they don't have time for that shit, right?
No.
They don't have time for sort of that process. They just have this is what I do, this is what I've been trained to do, this is what I'm going to do. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And some of them are and some of them aren't. Boris isn't. He's like, I'm not going to the reactor. So there's that.
Yeah. And that's another, what I love about this is we have it posed and just kind of laid out in front of us, all of these guys' different reactions and choices, and I don't judge them for any of them. Like,
of course.
In a lot of sense, I'm kind of with Boris of like, fuck absolute certain death. Like, I'm not just going to dive head first into the abyss for fucking just the sake of it.
Sure.
I'm like, no fucking way, man.
Right. And then, like you're saying, it's not judging at all. There's part of me that's like, could you have maybe dragged the guy out of there? Would that have been better than turning on the water valves? I don't know. And I don't cast judgment, but we're doing a podcast, so I'm going to consider things, right?
Right.
I'm definitely not going to say I would have behaved any differently or better. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't fucking know.
No way in hell. I prefer to judge the leadership and the politicians, though. That's fun for me.
It is a grand old time.
These bastards.
I love all these stony-faced old fucks in their suits coming on down.
Yeah.
We built this shelter to withstand a nuclear attack from the Americans, so we'll be all right.
Well, Nancy. All right. So let's hop over.
God, on that note, I am so glad this show didn't cut over to some corny-ass actor portraying Reagan at this time. Like, well, looks like the Ruskies attacked themselves, eh?
God.
Oh, thank God we didn't bounce around to stupid historical characters like that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty much destroying the whole point of the show.
Exactly. It's a good choice.
So let's move over to the second shift guys are like, what's going on here? As they start rolling in. A lot more mustaches and glasses.
So many.
They're discussing sabotage, a bomb, right? They're kind of going, what's going on here? And they're getting briefed on using the dosimeters. And that's when we get to the meeting.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
And they still think it's a control tank. That's what he goes on to brief them all on. The control tank malfunctioned. We had an accident. And the roof is now on fire.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
That's it.
So, big shot meeting. So what we're seeing here is Barukhanov, he's part of the Central Committee, and we're also seeing the Pripyat Executive Committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
executives of the town of Pripyat.
Correct. Executives of the town. Oof, boy, I'll tell you. That's some hardcore government shit right there.
Oh, yeah.
Barukhanov briefs them and says that everything's okay, besides the fact that 2,000 to 4,000 troops are coming for support.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's okay. 4,000 troops are coming. What? Hold on a second. Back that up. No, everything's good. Just tons of military guys coming, yeah. But what's really going on here? Fomin says mild radiation.
Right.
And our boy here, I got his name at the end, Petrovich.
Petrov, yeah.
Petrovich. This guy's name is rad. Petrovich.
Petrovich. And he's the one person speaking truth here.
Love
he's
this
like,
guy.
You saw men outside fucking vomiting. You saw radiation burns. This is worse than we are saying. I say we evacuate the town. He's the one person to say that.
He ain't buying it. And I love this, I love Barukhanov saying, my wife is here. Do you think I would keep her here if it wasn't safe?
Yeah, not knowingly, maybe.
To which Petrovich just says, the air is glowing, dude.
I fucking love it. The air's glowing, dickhead.
Also, what a ridiculous logical fallacy. You're assuming we have the same value system, right? You're assuming that your definition of safety and mine are the same. Therefore, I should agree with your logic that you wouldn't keep your wife in a dangerous area. That's fallacious argumentation, sir. That doesn't work.
Well, and also, you're just assuming that we all have a full understanding and awareness of the dangers present, which we don't. Like, nobody is aware at this point.
That's some politician shit. Oh, Dyatlov shuts this down and says it can't happen, minimal radiation. He says something like I think it's Cherenkov effect.
Oh, yeah, where he's talking about like why the sky is glowing. The fucking air. It's just the Cherenkov effect.
And these guys kind of go back and forth on this, and we get to Zarkov. Oh, Zarkov.
He was there during the initial Russian Revolution, baby.
He's Zarkov, my guy. Ugh.
Oh,
if anybody knows me,
meter, that just like the dosimeter, Dean's meter's fucking maxing out,
dude. I pulled out the political bullshit like dosimeter for me, the industrial one from the safe, and it broke immediately when this guy started talking. Holy shit! Fuck. If anybody knows me, they know I'm going to struggle to get through this part, but I'm going to try.
I love it.
Here he goes. The passion you have for the people. He's talking to Petrovich. For is that not the sole purpose of the apparatus of the state? Okay. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we fall prey to fear, but our faith in Soviet socialism will always be rewarded. Now the state tells us the situation here is not dangerous. Have faith. The state tells us they want to prevent panic. Listen well. It's true. When the people see the police, they will be afraid. I wonder why. But it is my experience that when the people ask questions, this is good.
Oh, this is the one.
This is a good one. But it is my experience that when the people ask questions that are not in their own best interest, they should simply be told to keep their minds on their labor and leave matters of state to the state.
Put your eyes back to conveyor belt, Conrad. Do not think.
Oh, shit, dude. That's fucking funny. I might cry laughing. Wow. That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. Anyway, he continues by saying, we seal off the city, no one leaves, and cut the phone lines, contain the spread of misinformation. This is how we keep the people from undermining the fruits of their own labor. Keep saying it.
It'll make it
as
true.
If it exists. Yes, comrades, we will all be rewarded for what we do here tonight. This is our moment to shine. Fuck the little people.
And then, yay!
That self-congratulatory golf clap they all give each other. Oh,
it's just the grossest that it's like, you guys are the ones tucked away in a nuclear blocking facility, far away, nice and safe. You're in power, and this is our moment to shine while firefighters are literally rotting. Fuck you.
This is great.
God, it's wretched. So gross.
Statism, the most dangerous of religions. I barfed, and I don't even have radiation poisoning, Matt. But enough of that. I'll spare people my rants. Let's go to Sitnikov. Great name. Oh, man, these Russian names are legit.
Oh, yeah.
Because this meeting comes down, it sort of barrels out to just these few guys, right?
Yeah, back to Brunikov and Fomin. And then, like you said,
Sitnikov. Dyatlov, Jesus Louises. Dyatlov. There we go. In Bryukhanov, or probably Brukhanov. I don't know if the Y is pronounced. I don't know. And we get to these guys, and this is where we get I send my dosimetrist into the reactor building. The large dosimeter from the safe that the one with the 1,000 Röntgen capacity. What was the number?
Maxed.
It burned. It broke when I turned it on. Typical. Moscow sends us crap. These guys are so funny. They're so full of contradiction. Like, we love this state, and Moscow sends us crap. How typical. It's like they're so conflicted. It's so interesting to observe the dialogue in that context. We found another dosimeter from the military fire department. It only goes to 200 Röntgen, and it maxed out. What game are you playing?
God, I love that they think truth has an agenda. It's like, dude, we're not talking about some person reporting this to you. We're talking about a fucking piece of equipment giving you the numbers. And you're like, that's the most
insane part about this. This isn't an interpretation of something. We're not discussing what we think of a person's character. I'm telling you, I have two instruments that are saying this. These are the facts.
Oh, God.
I'm not asking you what you think about some random senator in fucking Colorado. Like, that's interpretive, right? Show me what happened. What do you have it read? Is it here? Do we have evidence? Science evidence. We built a whole reactor on the principles of certain scientific truths.
Oh, dude, and that's, I mean, to be honest, the same as like what is truth and the interpretation of truth and the cost of lies. Those are all big, important themes in here. I think the denial of science is another scary theme here of, there is no agenda behind what he just said. He's not coming in there being like, well, I think it could be in this range and that's okay. No, he's saying the machine said this and the machine is functioning and it told us this. That's just the basic fact of it. Now what? Now what do you want to do with that? And they're acting as if, well, that doesn't go along with what we want to hear, so that's a problem. Like that's
this insane. Is wild. This is wild. This stuff. It's bananas. It's truth. What a fascinating concept.
What a fascinating species we are that we have come to the point. We have evolved and had civilization and done all these things and created machines that can read this, that can detect the amount of radiation that is out there, and then it tells us. The machine that we designed, that we made to tell us this, tells us the information. We go, that's not what I want to see. Like, fucking, we made it. It's your tool. Working correctly.
Right. There is always the possibility of failure.
Oh, for sure.
But with two exact pieces, it gets a little crazy. And it's not just that. It's all of the other stuff. Immediate, actionable evidence that is surrounding us.
Right.
And then, this is crazy. I like when he says, are you stupid?
You're a nuclear engineer and so am I. You tell me how an RBMK reactor explodes. Not a meltdown, explodes.
So, interesting side note about the HBO podcast is Craig Mazin was saying that Fomin's engineering credentials are really dubious.
Oh, really?
Essentially, and you'll have to listen to the episode to get the full bore of it, he was suggesting that it was almost an equivalent of like a mail-order degree.
I got it from DeVry University.
Dude, I got this from Cracker Jack box. It was in bottom. It was so delicious. My educational journey was so delicious that I got to the bottom and had a degree in engineering after eating yummy, yummy sugar snacks. Okay, dude. If you say so. Fuck, man. Anyway, but it continues. Another faulty meter, you're wasting your time. I checked the meter against the control. Dyatlov gets pretty aggressive here, right?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? And he says, look, I walked around the exterior building 4. There's graphite on the ground in the rubble. You didn't see graphite. I did. You didn't. You didn't. Because it is not there.
That's the most insane. Like, you are in the absolute passionate throes of denial when somebody's like, no, I saw it. It's there. And you're just going, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Like, what is your basis for saying, no, it isn't? Did you go look? Nah. And actually, the crazy part, too, is that we've already talked about Dyatlov saw the fucking graphite. He looked out the window and saw it. And he's still denying it.
What is it? What is it that compels these guys? You could almost say, okay, there's the denial of the individual. Mm-hmm. And then there's two men in utter denial.
Oh, yeah. And to be honest, I think it's a lot at play. I think it is a denial of, I don't want myself to get blamed for this. I think there's that own self-interest is involved. But then there is also the true, just larger fear response of denial of, if what you're saying is true, then now we have a disaster way beyond proportion that we ever expected, are able to handle, and this could be, catastrophic lives lost in this, and I just don't want to face that reality. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. It's very powerful, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very powerful. But
Dyatlov is acting, like you said, extremely emotionally, pounds the fucking table, saying, no, you didn't.
Right. Which is funny because it didn't start that way. So you would almost say, not a psychologist drink, but you would almost say like the denial is progressing through stages, right? Where he's getting angry now. Before it was, this is crazy. And he had cause for this. He had cause for reasonable doubt. But as we close in on the facts, the truth and facts aren't necessarily the same, I get it. But we start to see a more aggressive response from Dyatlov as he starts to get closer and closer to the reality that there's probably an inkling in his mind that knows is true. Because I'm getting the impression Dyatlov actually knows shit, like is a competent person outside of this.
Right. Because also, I mean, you got to think at this point too, even as you're denying it, you're probably thinking back on decisions you've made that you know now with new information going, oh, that might have been the wrong decision. That might have, that was a pivotal, crucial moment in time, and I maybe made the wrong choice. And you start to think back on over all of this. Right.
Absolutely. And then there is also this moment right here where they're talking about, let me pull up the dialogue here. You didn't because it didn't. Are you suggesting the core exploded? Foamine asks.
Yeah.
Yes. Please tell me how an RBMK reactor core explodes, Foamine asks. To which our guy says, I can't.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean,
Sitnikov.
They didn't even have a hypothetical model for how that would happen because they really thought the design made that an impossibility. So he's right in saying, I don't know how that can happen. Like, I can't describe to you the exact points of error, the things that failed that led to this. But then I love how he's like, but it did. Like, he finally is not caving to like, well, I guess I don't know. He's like, no, but it did though. Like, it's fucking exploded.
Right. This is what Foamine is engaged in, and there's a lot of these going on in this particular episode of television, which I love. It's logical fallacy, Matthew. Let's play what logical fallacy is Foamine engaged in.
What would that one be?
Argumentum ad ignorantium. He's appealing to ignorance by suggesting because you don't know, thus means it can't.
Right.
That does not add up logically. Right.
There we go. And that must be enough. Yeah. Story closed.
Right.
Since we don't know how.
Yeah.
Which is nonsense.
Yeah. Not good, buddy. Not good.
Well, our boys are down turning on the water valves fruitlessly.
Yeesh. Slogging through the water, knee deep.
Akimov and Leonid.
Yeah. What? Oh, yeah, that's his first name. I know him as Toptonov and Akimov. I always went last name. Well, not all of them.
It is easier that way, normally.
It is some, like Vasily I went with, the firefighter.
Yeah.
I know I'm not being consistent on that, but whatever. And we see Akimov going through the water. Toptonov is with him. He doesn't look well. I'm sorry, Toptonov says. Toptonov. He cries.
I think they're already having difficulty even turning these valves. They're getting weaker.
It's brutal, man. You have nothing to be sorry for. You did nothing wrong, but we did. And then we have Sitnikov on the roof. So there's some interesting interpretations of Sitnikov being ordered to the roof.
Yeah, to go look.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely take it as at least a veiled threat. I mean, the soldier accompanies him all the way up to the roof.
He does, and that cannot be ignored.
Right. It can't be.
It can't be ignored. And what sucks about this is we're not, because we're dealing with real people here, we handle this a little bit differently, right? It's not to say Sitnikov is not a brave and or heroic person and did not handle himself well and only went up to the core to check the roof because he was threatened at gunpoint. But but Craig Mazin in the creation of the show seems to suggest that with an armed guard following him to the roof, that he's really being ordered at gunpoint by a superior to go onto the roof. That's what I'm seeing in the show. And
I think people shouldn't even jump to the dramatic conclusion, like, oh, if he doesn't do it, they'll shoot him. I'm like, they were not just going to blow his brains out in front of everybody.
I don't think it's a James Bond movie. Him. Yeah, he probably would have gotten in trouble for it.
Dereliction of duty or whatever.
There's a reason the guy followed him up there.
Yeah.
There's a reason the guy followed him up there.
Right.
But he doesn't get anywhere near that fucking thing.
No, he doesn't. Even though that's pretend. That's not keeping you safe either.
Yeah,
that's extra true. 20 feet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm 30 feet away from the reactor core.
Smoke my cigarette and watch him do it.
Yeah. And what a heart-wrenching moment. The turn in the red face.
And just the size of that plume.
It's just billowing. The way he looks back at the soldier like, see, I told you. Now are you happy now?
And now I'm fucking poisoned to death for sure.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Like before, I don't know, maybe. Now, no question.
No question. Yeah. Ugh. Brutal. But yeah, his skin is reddening. He turns back. Oh my God, it's never going to get easier, Dean. Dean, it's never going to get easier.
I know. I hear terrible things happen,
Dyatlov.
Ooh, good spot by Matt Lewis in the chat. He looks at the soldier with a look knowing the soldier is dead too. It's true.
That's a good point. Yeah, he's like, I think he's more aware that this is, everyone is going to feel this. Like, I'm not alone.
Sure.
In this. I know how widespread this truly is now.
Yeah, man. Yep, 100%.
But Dyatlov is also sick. He barfs and is getting dragged out by the soldiers to be taken to the hospital.
And his world becomes a reality.
What's that?
Those soldiers flanking him are handsome devils, boy.
A couple of handsome young Russian boys.
A couple of beefcake report highs right there. 8s and 9s on the beefcake report.
Yeah, solid. Yeah, good cheekbones, good structure.
Yep. But I think this is a great moment for Dyatlov to have and for us to see.
Yeah, in this moment where he is finally physically affected by it, and he's seeing, I think it's Vasily, the same firefighter who's out there, starting to collapse.
Yep.
And he looks up and sees the plume as well. Finally, an undeniable reality of this is extremely fucking bad.
Right. Sitnikov being grilled and no sound. We're still seeing denial.
Right? Even with his reddened, burned face.
Brutal.
Ugh.
We see just the utter chaos inbound at the hospital. And then we go to Valery Legasov, our man at the beginning, a much younger version. Well, a much less sickly looking version.
Right.
First deputy director of, I believe, Kurchatov Institute of Atomic Energy. So he's a big shot in the field.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets a phone call that there's been an incident. And this guy is playing it down. No need to panic. Fire, most of it out. Controlled system tank explosion in the core. He ignores him. Or to continuously pump water. Any contamination, only 3.6 Röntgen an hour. Oh, that's significant. You should evacuate. That is a gut-punching moment for the audience.
Oh, yeah.
That is really well structured.
They essentially give him the order to it. He's like, well, you're the expert on the reactors, right? Okay, you're going to be on the committee to answer questions about the reactor functions and nothing else. You're not here to talk about policy. Bye. That's it. Hung up.
Gorbachev has appointed a committee to manage the accident. You're on it. Okay. All right, Gorby. We get an exterior shot, day, power plant. Akimov and Toptonov are all fucked up. They're manually turning the water valves, barely holding it together. And we get more establishing shots, and we close out the episode of this really haunting image in Pripyat.
Right. And this is also the brightest and nicest the episode has looked so far. Like this is a perfectly unaffected little town right now. Everything's nice.
It's really well shot because we see kids behaving as normal. And at the same time, we see what just looks like a place that is smoldering from a fire that's been contained.
Yes. And the dark cloud kind of gathering up above.
Yeah. You mean the fallout cloud of death?
Exactly.
Approaching Pripyat? Good gravy.
Kids running along to school, and then a bird falling onto the ground in death throes.
Ugh, poor little guy.
Fucking so scary.
Poor little guy. And that's
poor little birdie. Episode 1, man.
Hard cut to black after the dead bird.
Ooh. What a fucking intense episode of television,
wow.
man.
We're in for it.
Oh, I'm in.
We're in for it. We're in for some pain, bro. It's coming our way. Get ready for it.
Some hot guts pain.
Yep. Oof. Yep. Well,
I'm looking forward to it.
I understand that you solicited some listener feedback for this, Matthew. Is that true?
We do indeed have listener feedback.
Well, that sounds very exciting. Why don't we do some of that? Do you want to do some of that?
Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. So, do you want to kick things off? Why don't you kick things off, Matt?
I shall, with Sir Craig Daly. And he says, I know I've posted this elsewhere, but I remember this event unfolding at the time quite well, despite the around 1,500-mile difference and how it would affect me. Turns out we did get radioactive rain on Welsh Hills not far from where I lived, less than 100 miles. It did make me think about what would happen if we had a similar event at Sellafield, a nuclear power station in Cumbria. None of the thoughts were good. The bravery of those firefighters, the outright denial of any problem existing, it does make me think how other governments would have approached this. Relentlessly grim but compelling viewing. If you have only seen the first episode, then buckle up. It gets much worse. An excellent start to what has become an I cannot miss this series.
Yep.
Good shit.
Really good. There's a lot of great comments here. We got a few to get through. Let's see. Let's do... You got another one you want to rip off?
I got another one ready if you're not.
All right. Yeah, I got two I can do, but go ahead.
All right, from Mr. Conrad Hutchins. I've always been fascinated. I've always been fascinated by Chernobyl for some reason, and this series is brutal. Having fallen down the YouTube rabbit hole many times when looking at the disaster, this series makes it feel so incredibly realistic. I like the way that the original call to the firemen and the news broadcasts are from the actual source, the original. This shows amazing attention to detail by the producers. It's also amazing how close we got to a truly apocalyptic explosion if the meltdown had hit the underground water tanks. Damn.
There's a tail end of a comment from Jason Tick I like, which is, the filming of this is intelligent. They filmed this as a horror film with the radiation as the monster behind every corner. Look at how the show begins. We see the blast from a long distance, then we are thrown into the control room. This is so subtle that it puts the U.S. This is so subtle that it puts us, capital U.S., in the mind frame of the workers. Quote, what the fuck just happened? End quote. I like it.
That's very solid.
Hannah Brown.
Great tone.
I was genuinely horrified when I watched this first episode, and I haven't got a lot of knowledge about this incident. I was struck mostly by the institutionalized ignorance of the situation and the willingness to completely ignore the facts. Having talked to other people about this episode, some have said that they thought the acting wasn't great, but for me, one, I thought it was great, and two, this first episode is more about the gravity of the story than the characters because we don't know them yet. Can't wait to hear your guys' take on this. That's a really good point, Hannah. I didn't realize the acting had been criticized. That's interesting.
Really? That surprises me.
Yeah.
I got one from Eileen Porco. I think it's pronounced Eileen. Sorry if I fucked that up.
Come on, Eileen. Oh, sorry. I'm sure she's heard it before, but you know what? You get no quarter. My name's Dean Martin.
No quarter. Yeah, I'm Mr. Anderson, and I had nothing but it when it came out.
Heard them all.
Heard it all. But she says, the level of confusion and denial is unbelievable. I don't know how I would react to something like that happening, but it's shocking and infuriating to watch. I think what makes the show great is that they're not pulling any punches and trying to make it pretty and TV dramatic. They're showing the real ugly side of what was happening to people in many different levels. Knowing that it happened that way, that people were not given enough information and protection is what makes it scary.
Indeed.
The confusion. I think that's a good point, too, that this show captures confusion very well.
Well done, Eileen, I believe. Porco. I don't know if your name does not look super familiar. I'm an asshole if you've posted before and I've missed it, but welcome to the madness that is LSG Media. You're a welcome addition. Who else do we want to do? My guy Mark Stepanek. The utter confusion in the control room at the beginning and immediate "we did nothing wrong" comments explained without saying it how quickly this whole thing went horribly sideways. My recollection at the time of the accident was complete lack of believable information in the beginning because it was, quote, contained. The black suit dude during the Chernobyl town meeting was utterly without human emotion, all while he smiled and praised a socialist utopia. What I like about Mark's comment is the very beginning of this, because it makes me think back about one of the things that our main guy was saying, Dyatlov, which is in Fomin, both of them, which is like, this is impossible. It's funny to think about this, which is, it's impossible. So if you structure your whole thing around it's impossible, then you really don't have, what's the contingency plan if it goes tits up?
There's nothing. You have nothing lined up.
Right. Like what's impossible, I think about this. I don't have a contingency plan for if my water starts rapidly filling with, if my basement starts rapidly filling with water in the middle of a podcast and it's not raining, because that seems impossible to me, right? Therefore, Matthew, I have no contingency plan for that possibility.
Ooh,
so if it happens, I'm going to go, what the fuck is happening? This can't be real. My feet are wet though.
I mean, it makes me
I'm
think
not saying I would deny it, but I'm just saying I would be ill prepared. And I don't know, it's the Mike Tyson quote, everybody got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? That's the truth of people. We panic. We react differently. Some of us react better than others when stress is really turned up to 11. So I'm not suggesting that the Soviets were not prepared for this. What I am suggesting is that based on the leadership's temperament, which is this is impossible, you would almost think, how prepared could they have been for it then? If it's a contingency they just didn't think could happen. It's not like they have great fire protocols, I'm sure. Like, oh, there's a fire. We know how to fix that. Go, fix it.
Totally.
We know, right? And obviously that's a lot less severe. This is like worst case scenario shit. I wonder how much and maybe the series will reveal, did they drill for this? Did they, It's an interesting concept Mark brings up, this we did nothing wrong thing, and not just that, but like the complete lack of information. And that made me think that just the lack of a contingency for something you just believe is impossible, which is fascinating.
Exactly. I mean, I always think about the Titanic with that, of how they had like a third of the amount of lifeboats than they needed because they were like, it can't sink, it's unsinkable.
Oops.
These are just for decoration mostly. We're not going to need them.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yep.
Oh. One last one I want to read, even though I think it's a good comment about what we've already been saying, from Miss Carmelita McCoy. I love this first episode. It works for me on the same level that my favorite horror films do. The people of the town coming out to the bridge, drawn by their curiosity and totally unaware of the danger, reminds me of an alien invasion flick. The plant workers moving through the facility reminds me of the supernatural horror where an immensely powerful, unseen force is stalking the characters. Of course, the threat depicted here isn't something cooked up by creative minds, which makes it all the more gut-wrenching. Awesome. I think that's a good way of saying it. A powerful, unseen force makes it feel very like Lovecraftian.
Yeah,
got that feeling of just like a creeping dread that you can't quite perceive, but you know it's there.
Yeah, it's the corner of your eye.
Exactly.
Carmelita with a good write-up as usual. She's a champ, that one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, man. Well, that sort of wraps up our initial coverage of 123.45, first episode of Chernobyl, the miniseries. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
That I'm just looking forward to the rest of it, and I hereby swear I will at least be slightly better with the Russian names next time around.
We'll do
Hopefully
our best.
We get those a little more under control.
We'll do our best. So yeah, again, we're not going to have spoilers and stuff because I'm not going to research beyond watching the episode outside of perhaps the companion podcasts. That way I don't, then there's really no misinterpreting what Mason might be trying to do here. Yeah, that's it, man. So that was quite an episode of television. It's really an interesting, it's funny because a lot of the discussion in some of the comments was this idea of a horror film setup, but I have a feeling it's going to get pretty dramatic and brutal as it moves on.
Yeah. Well, you know what? One last
effects
thing.
of radiation, boy. Oof.
Did you look at all at Craig Mazin's filmography, his film history?
Yeah, he does comedy mostly, like Hangover and shit like that.
And Scary Movie 3 and 4, superhero movie.
Yeah.
Whoa. Wow. You really had, you got the talent in you there, man.
Yeah, man.
Holy shit.
I believe if you want to leave your lane, you leave your lane, man. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was mostly writing and screenplays, right?
Mostly. He only directed like one or two others, I think.
Still a successful man. He knows what he's doing, obviously. But, yeah. All right. Matthew, we are out of here. Thank you guys very much for tuning in to a little special miniseries coverage on the Science Fiction Film Podcast of the miniseries Chernobyl. We will catch you next week. So that's the plan, right? We're going to do one a week. We're a little bit behind from the broadcast, so this will run a couple of weeks after it ends. And we hope you enjoyed our coverage of Chernobyl. Make sure to check